Hello everyone, shalom lekulam. Welcome to another episode of the Expert Circle podcast, where we talk with prominent voices from the Jewish and Israeli community around the world. And today with us we have Tali Litvak Kor, שהיא גם מדברת עברית, והפודקאסט שלנו היום יעסוק בתחום התעסוקה, ולכן אנחנו נעשה אותו באנגלית לכל המאזינים הישראלים שלנו, ו-also for the English speakers, we're going to have the bulk of the podcast in English, because we're going to talk about the Canadian and North American work environment, both from the employer side and from the job seeker side. So Tali, who is with us today, she's the founder of Career Mind Consulting, a firm specializing in recruitment and in talent acquisition strategies. She has over 15 years of global experience. She's supporting startups, mid-size enterprises, and works flexibly with teams and embedded in their recruitment process. So now, in your own words, Tali, welcome, and tell us a bit more about your professional journey. What led you to focus on talent acquisition, recruitment, and all of that jazz?
Thank you so much, Marina, for having me today. So yes, I started my journey, or maybe I'll start from the end, since you already mentioned that. I'm the founder and consultant for Career Mind Consulting, and I'm helping businesses to hire and retain top talent for their teams. My journey started back in Israel 15 years ago. I worked for the Israel aerospace industry, and I supported or was part of the headquarters and supported the 12 divisions that they had back then. And I quickly realized that each team, each department has their own needs, even for the same role. If we'll take an example of application developer or any other role, different teams had different requirements, different aspects of how they want their goals to be met, or what kind of a style of work environment they had. And I learned quite quickly that we need to be flexible and agile with the work, especially in the recruitment and strategy stages of how we hire, how we assess candidates, and all the way through the retention strategy of how we keep employees in place and offer them those opportunities. Moving into Canada about 12 years ago, I worked here in several agencies, and that definitely offered me an opportunity to understand a bit more of the North American market, which definitely had some differences and still has compared to Israel and all other countries, and gave me that opportunity to work with really diverse clients and different industries and different roles. And after a while, I opened my own shop, my small consulting company. And I do focus mostly nowadays on working with startups, with smaller organizations, mid-sized companies. I still have my kind of a long-standing enterprise corporate environment that I still work with. But really my passion is technology. And specifically, if we talk about software, SaaS, software as a service, and any roles that related to that aspect, engineering position, and that would be, I think, my current scope of work. Overall, I would say the biggest belief I have is really there is no one size fits all. Each business is a bit different, and each strategy and recruitment will have a bit different approach.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you for that background. I'm wondering, what are you seeing today as the top challenges for organization when they are trying to hire the best talent? And also, just a word for our listeners, we focus so much on the job seeker side, right? And we always think that the employer is in the driver's seat or they have the upper hand, when sometimes when we switch that lens to the employer, they have their own challenges as well. It's not that easy to have the best people, and there's a lot of risk involved in the hiring process. So I think it's also useful, whether people are in the job seeker seat or hiring, always to be aware of both sides and understand the dynamic. So what would you say organizations face today when they hire in the current market?
Yeah, so I think I should probably start and say that in my world, or how I see it, there are three major steps in the recruitment strategy or the recruitment process. And each step will have their own challenges, which I can briefly describe. and kind of connecting to the nowadays as well. The first would be the actual looking into the team and the company, understand what exactly do we need to hire, what is the goal of the new person that we want to join, or maybe replacing someone. Do we need to hire exactly what we already had in place, or are we looking for a more innovative approach? Are we looking something kind of a gap to fill that we felt that we had before? So the first step is really looking into before we looking externally, or kind of a starting the process, is really understanding what are the needs, what are the goals, and what achievements we're trying to make or to achieve for our business. And then we will get to the step of actually, starting the recruitment process. And I think the challenge of the first phase, it's really understandable. It's not easy to determine what exactly the business needs or what skills are missing. So there is a process around that. The recruitment stage itself has their own challenges, but that's kind of the steps we're taking into understanding what would be the best way to assess candidates, who should be involved in the hiring process, where do we post, how do we build our employer brand to attract the best
Mm,
talent. And the last step is really going actually after the hiring, like how do we onboard the employee, what kind of a retention strategy we can offer to make sure we keep those people in place. And I can share, just to connect that the biggest challenge companies and businesses have, they're not necessarily their employees did something wrong, is really the misalignment of expectations starting from the
mm,
beginning of the process, when we're trying to determine who is the right fit, but we're not necessarily know what the expectations or how to achieve those goals. And that's how we maybe not intentionally, but not sharing all the entire information with our new hires or for potential candidates. And this transparency is very important. So both sides
mm,
understand what exactly is needed. Each of those steps have those challenges. And in the end, the retention, or kind of if we do come to the point where hiring the wrong candidate, there is quite a high price to pay, right? Because
yeah.
aside from the fact that we need to replace this person, there is a burden on the existing team members. There are challenges around how do we restart and all the effort and time that we put into it. So I think that's kind of the main challenges overall for the recruitment process or talent acquisition.
Yeah. And obviously, everyone's talking today about AI and how it's changing the job market in so many ways. So, how are you seeing that happening from the employer side? Because they always used some automation and some AI tools, those systems that sift through all the thousands and thousands of CVs that companies many times receive. So, what's changing now with those new tools that are being added into the picture?
Yes. So maybe I'll take a step back and I explain. I think the main major challenge, if we go back to the what is the major issue with the recruitment process, was actually aligns well with some of the automation strategy, is the overload of resumes. The market is shifted if we do compare that for a couple of years ago, and we do see many more applications. So if there is a business that listening now and posted a role recently, they probably received hundreds or thousands of applications to their roles. And then what do we do with that? How do we tackle it, especially if we don't have an HR person or maybe dedicated recruiter, or maybe they have a limited time to work through those resumes? And there are strategies, that technology that being utilized for that, which has their own pros and cons, of course, and limitations that we need to take into consideration. But definitely, one tool I want to mention is the applicant tracking system, which is not new, but definitely offers this solution to this challenge of trying to tackle on, or at least filter some of those resumes with either keywords or at least some automation. The other aspect is the AI tools, which are kind of slowly entering into some of those applicant tracking system, or actually some of my clients do use just ChatGPT. There's some strategies around that to utilize those tools, even free versions for some of those resumes, although a bit more challenging if you have hundreds of resumes, because there's some steps you need to take before you can actually utilize the AI tool if you just use it without applicant tracking system.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of for the technical part. Other things that I want to mention for strategies, and if we go back to the challenges, is what lots of current companies do. One is the referral opportunity. Lots of companies do not take that route of posting and receiving the hundreds of resumes. They start their process with referral, which even they have a special program for it that compensate or kind of has some posted referral program, or just just in general inquire with their teams and with their network for potential employees or someone who might be looking for a job. I do want to also mention maybe some limitations though around those tools. One is with the referral program, we have to always remember if we do want a diversity on a team, that's a quite limitation with referrals. And I'm not talking about necessary diversity of people, it's really diversity of thoughts. Because we do find in lots of research that people who we kind of refer or tend to connect might not bring that innovative approach or might have some limitations around how much diversity we can get. And North America and Canada specifically really buzzing around the diversity and inclusion pieces. So that's something to keep in mind if that's the only route that we're taking. But we can talk later on the benefits as well, of course. And for the AI tools, although it can be helpful, but as I mentioned, there are some limitations to it. Um, Around the AI reading an eye strategy, which we know that lots of candidates do use AI to write their applications, which is okay. But then we use AI to read AI, which automatically skew some of the results when we try to filter the only way. So idea is that we still need that human approach. We still need someone to control those and making sure that those tools utilize the best way. And another, of course, or last kind of resource I want to mention is something that I do offer as part of my business is really those support or outsourcing services or partners or growing your team or just making sure there are enough people, enough human bodies to support those processes as well and help out with those, either implementing those tools, looking into the process and strategy, which I typically come on board.
Okay. And what do you think about those companies that basically offer the first interview with AI, the very first screening interview? We're seeing more and more of these companies pop up. Would you recommend an employer to use those?
I think those the tools, and there are several that is out there, and I myself using some of them. For example, what I find very efficient is for a bulk recruitment. So if we really have to hire a large amount of people for the same role, let's say customer support representative, we need 20 of them for a call center or for a technical
Hmm.
support, then yes, those tools could be very efficient. For example, pre-recorded pre-screening, which I use currently. It's just, you review those resumes, you use the keywords, and then you send 50 pre-recorded interview invites, and then you only need to spend 5-10 minutes to watch those to screen the first step, which is very, very helpful. So I think it's just looking into what are the needs. It's not something, for example, that will be valuable though if you want to try to hire a manager or a leader
Yeah.
or a senior level role, because you want to have
Mm.
this ability to have a conversation, to have a feeling of who they are, what
Yeah.
kind of a communication style they have, to follow up on some of those questions. So yes, I think it can be utilized, and but it really depends on what skills or requirements, what are we looking to gain from that tool. Determine that when I was talking about the first step, what are we looking for, what tools we should utilize for that, what type of workflow we want to have, workflow in terms of who should meet and in what step. Those determinations and decisions will make a huge difference of how we assess the candidates and what we get in the end, what kind of results.
Yeah. One size that does not fit all, as you said. Something I'm seeing also from the Circle job board that's really interesting to me is we embrace more and more AI, but employers seem to want people back in office. I'm seeing so few fully remote positions, many hybrid, many, fully in office. Why do you think employers do that? Or, maybe you're not seeing this trend?
Yes, that's a really, really good question. And I can tell you it comes up in almost every conversation I have with employers and companies. Unless they have a very certain work environment they can offer physically, because let's say they don't have an office and it's pretty clear they have a remote environment. But every other company that has that ability to choose, this question is always comes up. And the idea is the control, is how much control you want to over, the tasks, responsibilities, and people. And the main factor that I see is the leadership. Do we have leaders that know how to collaborate well and being able to lead teams in a diverse work environments, and how that can be even possible if we do have a blended team in terms of some work remotely, some work in person, or hybrid approach. How do we make sure that there is an engagement from all sides? How do we make sure the team is collaborative, and can the leader, the manager of the team, can actually make that happen and make sure that everyone is involved and he has that visibility to their work if needed. So I think my advice, and when we have those conversations, is really looking again to the actual and for the bigger companies that have a certain work environment, my always suggestion is looking on the team kind of a basis. It is difficult to have a blended team, but if you decide there is one team that is more in a hybrid approach and other can be actually full remote, that will be the best strategy, because you can at least have assigned a leader or have that approach to each team, and they're not kind of a misalignment or misunderstanding of the requirements and what is needed. The companies do go back to that because for many business, I'm kind of trying to answer the initial question. The idea of going back to hybrid or in office is it actually comes from many reasons. There is a business decisions around that, though also the approach of how we try to engage also clients when we have kind of a same room, same kind of an in-person approach. And some companies do need that. And in the end of the day, I think we do also realize we need that in-person communication. It is a challenge on both sides. And for startup environments who fully work remotely, I always kind of stress the point. There needs to be opportunities to meet in person, even if you
Yeah.
full remote. Make sure there are some events, training in person. Support them with finding a maybe space and work one day in a month. Go for lunch. Still, this connection is still important.
Yeah, I fully agree. As much as we all love the flexibility, we just can't beat that in-person connection, because when we see each other, even if we stand in line together, take, grabbing lunch, you just see the person in a more like multi-dimensional way. Even if we had like not the best meeting, but then we go to coffee later or we just walk in the hall together, kind of helps air this out, versus just like staying in the silence of your room and like just staring at the screen and like, okay. So I recently had a chance to work in person much more, and I do see how that boosts motivation and connection and creativity. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where it shapes in the next few years. So let's switch gears a little bit to the candidate side of the house. We talked about how employers from their side deal with thousands of resumes and the tools that they have. What can candidates do to stand out? And I know everyone's asking about it, everyone's talking about it, but when you hire, you talk to so many candidates. What grabs your attention?
Yes, I think my approach is always about do something that others won't do. You really have to stand out of the general crowd out there, especially in the current market. So just as an example, if we had this podcast happening, let's say for 5 years ago during COVID, the situation was totally different. It was what we call it was a candidate market, which really candidates had many opportunities out there. And on my end, I can share it was really difficult to attract talent, or kind of a uh, um, the reasons behind making changes were totally different than in the current market.
Yeah.
So I think that really what the key here, especially if looking in from the employer side, is really just offering that more personable approach, getting out there. as we're talking about meeting those people in person. So my practical advice for candidates is, if you do apply for a role, look for a person to connect with. Either on LinkedIn, either on their website. If there may be a career fair happening and they're participating, maybe they have a training or webinar that you can see on their website that they're doing. Join that, go there. Make sure that you have that opportunity to connect in a different way, something that probably 99% of candidates are not going to do,
Yeah.
or not necessarily going to invest. That would be the best way. And going back to referrals, of course, that would be another point, as we mentioned, from the candidate perspective, finding someone who can connect you, making sure that your application reviewed. And that, I think, would be the best approach for candidates nowadays, to make sure that they can at least get into the first round, or make their application visible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I definitely have my fair share of funny situations where I showed up at different places, not fully invited, but it went fine. And that definitely helped. Sometimes not immediately, but in different ways, just making yourself memorable when possible. And of course, being in person around in the areas where companies hire certainly helps to kind of be in their network, which is a great segue to the question that everyone's talking about. It's been talked so much about networking, right? We know it's important, but do you have your own kind of unique way or your own advice on making it meaningful?
Yes, I think what I find, even from my own personal experience, is what we're looking at networking is the quality and not the quantity. The idea is, it doesn't matter how many connections you have on LinkedIn or friends on different other social media, is really what quality of relationships you can build. So networking is not really about, how many, I guess, connections out there. It's really, if you can, when you really need help, you need an advice, you need that opportunity, would you have contacts or connections of people who will be able to support? So the idea is building that. And the biggest question is how. And it's really about consistency,
Hmm.
being out there and constantly being engaged, even if it's on LinkedIn, supporting others, sending, some kind of a checking in with people that you previously been, either your previous coworkers or someone that you had, a chance to meet in one of the events. Consistency is a key. It's not only algorithm that we're talking about, is really when you show up and the person remembers you, that means that is a quality. They will remember you if you showed up for them or supported them in the past, or they just remember you and your maybe positive approach, or something that about you that was great to communicate. And networking is important. For myself, when I actually train or coach candidates, it's not a one-time thing. This is for life. It's a skill for life. It's not
Yeah.
something you do only when you're looking for a job or need an opportunity. This is a skill that we need to develop just to be, part of the community, or have that opportunity, have those opportunities to connect well with others.
Yeah, absolutely. We evolved living in clans, groups, and to pull each other. And I definitely had one great career opportunity that came from two jobs before that when I did show up just in life for someone from that job, and that kind of rolled into another opportunity. Because we also talked about tech, when I hire in tech, for example, I do really value seeing people's opinions online. It kind of gives you that idea of like who they are outside of the interviewing process with you, where they do really try to impress, obviously, but even Medium articles or articles on LinkedIn or lectures they've done really helps paint that picture. And another thing I've done that was helpful was to find meetups in person in the
Mhm.
area I'm in on specific topics, right? So one of the topics I was interested is customer experience. So who are the people, like what's the local chapter for UX or CX, and just connecting with those people over beer and talking about, or any other beverage, and talking about the field, not necessarily, oh, I'm interviewing for this place, can you refer me, but just kind of building that, oh, what are other companies saying or thinking about this topic nowadays, and that kind of helps build those relationship with less kind of pressure. And then who knows what can come out of that. Awesome. So um, I'm really curious on your take on, the stress that some people are feeling about their current jobs. For example, even jobs that were like so highly revered, or at least I really appreciate, like developers or architects, in tech specifically. Like, I think they're so smart, so brilliant. Whatever I'm creating on customer experience is cool, but they're actually writing the code. And lo and behold, we're seeing that some of these people, they are the ones who are struggling. And for me, it was really unexpected. I mean, obviously, at some point, people started talking about it, but how do we, how can each person look at their own career, their own role, and kind of hedge themselves, or like, AI proof their career, if that's even possible?
Yes. So maybe I'll start with a maybe strategy that's not necessarily related to AI, but I think that's a key for lots of job seeker nowadays is really looking to on your own kind of a selling points or your own brand and understanding what kind of skills you're coming with, especially in a certain industry. So I can can make an example, and that will be again from the employer side a great strategy that I haven't mentioned, but this is building a pipeline. So if we talk about smaller companies or startups, there's always opportunity to build those pipelines and meeting with candidates and have them kind of ready as needed. And from the candidate perspective, that's exactly what they need to do. They need to become part of that pipeline. They need to become part of those lists and having those conversations. So if we do have someone that comes from a certain industry, I think checking first what they already have or know, what can they offer to potential employer. So my own personal example that I just completed a quite long project with a company, SaaS company that has a very niche product. They are in the quality management system product, which is a very small market specifically for the life sciences. And I've been doing their recruitment for more than a year and hired more than 20 people. But the point
Oh.
is, I was willing to talk to anyone that works in that industry because I knew there is another role coming up and another role coming up. And I was open to have those conversations and building that pipeline for the company and for myself to be able to hire in that industry and for that company moving forward. So the idea is for the candidates is become part of that, looking who are the competitors or who are the maybe kind of the service providers or the companies that are within the same industry. That will be the best match because we are looking for companies or sorry candidates who coming from similar companies, candidates who coming from an existing understanding and experience and exposure to either terminology or similar technology or some background of what the client needs are. So if it's a product development or software development that already had some background, they will have much easier transition. And sometimes they can even bring those new ideas to the company. And that would be the best point for candidates. First to look, where is your value would be the higher or the kind of the most presentable to potential employer. And from the AI standpoint, I think I only want to mention that since we start using AI, I see more and more candidates using that, but also lots of funny stories around it. So I think it's important to keep in mind that if you do use the tool, making sure you review that. Some really critical
Are you
points
saying they
are
need to delete the top line that says, here's your updated resume with all the keywords that you requested, and remove that little thing before they paste it in the tool?
that's exactly one of the examples. I have candidates replying me with a full, it's not only the resume, even the email correspondence I'm having. I had candidates forgetting to remove the upper and header of what they receive because I think there is a copy button then so they just copy paste it in full and
Yeah.
forget about it. I had that happening. I had people in the resume using terminology that is specifically company based. There is no way they had that system or company or board in place in her previous job, but I guess when they had an input of the job description to create their files, they didn't review that, and there's no way that in previous company they had that, and we know that they might not because they're not
Oh, that's so
familiar.
funny.
But and there are so many stories around it. So my idea, if it is a tool that we all use, and I'm very excited to see also how we utilize that in the future. I think it's a very important tool for lots of things, but it also need to be used in a efficient way, because in some cases it actually creates the opposite impression, which that
Yeah.
with the examples that I mentioned, that exactly was the fact. If we talk about the employer side as well, on that note, even from the employer side, we have to remember when we use AI to automation, and I use that as part of my sourcing and headhunting approach, you have to make sure you have those small things, ready. You cannot, automate it the same name and reach out to someone with the wrong name because you forgot,
Yeah.
to change that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or timing, some messages being sent on Saturday or Sunday, which is clear for the automation piece that it was not a
Yeah.
person sending that. So those small things that still, can create that human side of things needs to be implemented in the best way.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think it's important when we write role descriptions. It's okay to, make it more efficient with AI for grammar, for punctuation, but especially when, attracting top talent, infusing some of that personality is really important. In my one of my last roles, I read the job description and was just, I want to have coffee with the person who wrote this, and this was before AI, but and just the connection with that hiring manager was immediate because I felt that like I really felt this job is for me because I know that the work culture and our outlook on that profession is very similar. So it can even weed out some people, probably not that much, but those who really like catch on to the personality of the job description, that can help make that match. Also, it's really interesting what you said in the beginning of your answer about niche capabilities and niche areas. I'm seeing it like a pattern when people talk about how to deal with AI. Maybe AI can do the automated or repetitive parts of your job, but it doesn't know all the niches. So the more we know about a specific niche or have experience with something unique, as you said, probably will stand out against other candidates. So that's a really great tip.
Yeah, I want to make a
So
point, if
yeah,
you don't mind, about that.
sure.
So, one of the things that you mentioned is really important, is really about because we do focus here on this conversation about maybe the technical experience and skills or knowledge, but something to mention, there is AI utilized in other steps in the recruitment process by employers. For example, the interview, which can analyze your tone or voice or your expressions and those type of tools. So there are definitely some limitations around that. But candidates, from the candidate side, is of course keeping that in mind. What we talk about first impression, it's even more analyzed now than ever if the employer uses that tool. From the employer side, it's really important to remember what you said. Some of those, algorithms or some of that technology cannot really explain well or connect well between what you feel about a candidate. Are you connecting well? Are the communication styles or the work environment, the work culture is still kind of so there are limitations around those assessments, but there are being in progress. There's some involvement in those stages as well. And I'm assuming that will continue, but I always, from the employer side, I always remember there are some limitations. It's really still important to rely on your own, feeling about how you feel about the candidate. What are kind of were you able to connect well? Are you able to see working with them, kind of see
Yeah.
how you can being able to collaborate well with them, even if AI says yes or no. There are some cues. So generally speaking, looking into the numbers, they're about 70% give and take with the limited research that's being done currently of success around that area, for assessing or utilizing AI for culture fit match assessment.
Yeah, that's really interesting because sometimes as a hiring manager, it's a little bit, you need to, at least in companies I worked at, I needed to write my reasoning and kind of, do I want to hire this person or not, kind of give a rating. And all the soft skills, although they're so important, it's kind of hard to write it in a corporate way, like what exactly you think about this person from a cultural fit perspective. So you kind of find the right words for it. But if AI can help us find the words for it or kind of give that score, that's a little bit tempting, but definitely I hope it won't make people rely on that too much to the extent that they kind of disregard their own intuition or feeling or ability to connect with that person. Yeah. A brave new world is coming at us.
Yeah, I mean, it is exciting though. There are lots of opportunities, but we also need to remember how to manage that or how to use that in the best way. Yeah.
Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap up, from all your years of experience, is there anything surprising or unexpected that you want to share with our listeners about, the work of employment?
That's a good question. And I think I have maybe 2 points around that. One, I think just to summarize that AI component of it. I think if we look back history about 25 years ago, and I think our generation really can feel and see it, is when we got the internet and computers in place. And honestly, those who were not able to keep up at this point or at this stage or at some stage could not really, being able to integrate in the work environment. So it is important to some extent to understand that there is a need to scale up. There is a need to grow or understand what are the technologies out there and how that can be utilized for my job, and actually eliminate that fear that lots of candidates has around is my job going to be eliminated, or my role will be canceled because of those tools. So if you do learn how to use that, similar to what we had to do 25 years ago or so, to learn the internet, to learn the computer, and those who were able to could easily integrate in the market. It did not replace that. It just gave us tool to use them
Yeah.
the best or to do our work a bit better. And then the other point is funny enough, is when I talk to, I would say, students or parents of students, and I think that's what is really surprising me that I can share, is lots of those parents or kind of those who need to choose their profession nowadays go back to a more trades, more kind of a
Yeah.
work that is being done by hands. And that's an interesting concept that I see. And that will be probably everything that we described right now. The challenges around finding a job, the technology which might be overwhelming for some. So I think that's the most surprising for me, is that the service oriented potential, but I also can see that lots of the government approaches is around that. It's just what are the needs of the current market, what are the needs of our kind of a society and our and a general population in Canada and also United States. And AI also can still be scary for some. So that's kind
Yeah.
of the route that they're taking. I can give one example that I think showcased that even in a more extent, is I have a neighbor here that she chose about a decade ago, about 10 years ago, to transition from being a teacher to a QA, a quality assurance software. And that was really, really, appealing back then. It's, going into technology,
Yeah.
working from home, or maybe office. It was not back then working from home. She's been working from home for the last couple of years, but then layoffs came. And the last couple of years, we know that it's been a bit of a challenge, and she was let go. There were budget cuts, and she came back to be a teacher. And I
Wow.
met her recently and I asked her about it. How can how can you do that? How is that possibly, appealing to you? And she said that that's something that she really enjoyed doing, because that was where her passion, when she just started her career. And she did that transition for the reason that she had back then. And she really enjoys that aspect of going out of her house, meeting people. And I think the point is here, no matter how much we want to be in a certain profession, we still need to like what we're doing. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be hobby. It doesn't have to be something that, we just like in our spare time, but we still need to enjoy what we're doing. And that's kind of an example that I always remind myself. If you like learning, if you kind of enjoy what you're doing, that's what will keep you, no matter what changes out there, you will be able to keep up and learn.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's not obvious. I think, people that get to do that and like what they do and be, happy to start a Monday, that's a really, really lucky position to be in. And I hope everyone can be there, but certainly it helps to overcome any challenge and kind of regain that motivation and also be creative and be curious about your field, right? If you like it, you're curious about how it's changing and you want to change with it in a positive way, and it can help reduce those fears or anxieties about how the world is changing. Absolutely. Well, that's a positive note to end on. So thank you so much, Tali, for being with us today. We'll, of course, share all your contact details in the show notes for companies and for individuals who want to learn more from you. And thank you so much for the hard work that you're doing and for helping our community.
It was a pleasure, Marina. Thank you so much again for having me.